This is Teen Quest Live, where we create online conversations about youth culture, parenting, and issues facing youth workers in today's world. Our host, Mark Witt, has served as a pastor and youth pastor in multiple churches, and he's the founder and director of Teen Quest, a youth ministry that creates peak experiences for youth groups and teenagers through camping, events, missions, and evangelism. Welcome to Teen Quest Live.
Hi, this is Mark Witt. Hey, youth ministry can be difficult at times. Parents can be hard to deal with, teens can be difficult, and even our senior pastor may give us some challenges. We all need someone to look up to, someone we can trust. When we face difficult times, we need a mentor. Well, today my guests are youth pastors that are in the trenches working with kids. Tom Repke from New Hope Community Church in Loudonville, Ohio. David Dickerson from Destiny House in Calcutta, Ohio. Luke McCain from the Bible Chapel in Pittsburgh. Eric Furman from Calvary Baptist in Byesville. And Dan Hispanic from Berean Baptist Church in Mansfield, Ohio. Hey, today we're going to talk about finding youth ministry mentors. Stay with us right now. Well, guys, glad to have you on the show today to talk about this very important subject. I know, Luke, I met you not too long ago here in Pittsburgh area. In fact, I remember years ago going to your church, the Bible Chapel, and speaking when there was a real tiny little church. And I preached one Sunday morning, and now the thing is like going crazy. How many people do you got going to Bible Chapel?
Well, we have our main campus, the South Hills campus, which we see about 1,500 people a weekend, but total between all of our campuses, we see about 4,000 people during the weekend. So it's been a blessing,
wow.
Absolutely. So really
Dan, cool. Okay, Dan, tell me about your church. You're in Berean Baptist Church. Tell us about it.
Berean Baptist in Mansfield, Ohio. We're in between Cleveland and Columbus area, and I've been here about 8 years. And we run between
8 years.
200 depending. Yep, 8 years August.
You are a veteran. 8 years, fantastic. What about you, Eric? Calvary Bible Church or Baptist Church?
Yeah, Calvary Baptist is in Byesville, Ohio. It's the southeastern kind of corner of the state of Ohio. We exist in a small town, but probably run maybe 160, 180 on a Sunday. Real kind of thriving college ministry there. So I've been here for 18 years.
Well, 18? Did you say 18?
Yeah.
Well,
yes,
wow. Wow. Okay, and David Dickerson, tell us about your church.
We're actually Destiny House Church. We're actually in Calcutta or East Liverpool, Ohio. We're actually in the corner of Ohio that meets the West Virginia border and the Pennsylvania border. We run about 450, 460. Every weekend we have about 2 services that we run, about to go to 3 because we're just running out of room. So I'm probably the baby of the bunch. I've only been in Ohio for about 7 months now.
7 months?
Actually moved from the state of Arkansas to move up here to join the team up here at Destiny House. So
you don't have that southern accent.
I don't. My dad was a minister, and so we moved around for years and years and years, and I never wanted to have that southern drawl, but I reserve it if I need to use it. So.
All right. Now, Tom, tell me about your church, New Hope.
New Hope is we're actually a daughter church of Berean. They planted us 10 years ago. We are in a village of about 2,300, but we see about 475 is in our 2 weekend gatherings, and we too are getting ready to launch a 3rd gathering in the fall.
Well, this is exciting. We've got all different sizes of churches and all different mentor, or I should say, times of being involved in youth ministry. Some of you guys have been there a long time. Some of you have been not there so long, and so we've got a good mix. So let's talk about our subject today of mentoring. First of all, can someone give me the definition of a mentor? What in your definition would be a mentor? Tom, you have an idea?
I do, and in fact, let me just draw on. It's sort of an urban legend, but even in terms of walking with students, the idea of mentoring. Supposedly, I think it's in the Iliad. Ulysses is looking for someone to raise up his son as he gets ready to go off to battle, and he looks to his best friend, whose name happens to be Mentor, and asks if he'll teach his son how to become a man. And I think in the context of what we're doing directly in ministry, having someone that can walk alongside us, not so much about the masculine journey, but about what it means to be in community, what it means to be in leadership, what it means to be leading others, and strategically how do you do that, that's really what mentoring is all about.
How many of you guys have a mentor, that you have somebody in your church or somebody that you know that is actually your mentor? How many of you have one? What about you, Dan?
Not currently. I have a few different people that have leaned into me over the years, and I still talk to a lot of my former senior pastors. So they kind of spent a lot of time, different points, and in the time I've been here, just kind of talking to me, walking me through different things. Sometimes it's really helpful to find someone kind of outside the situation, outside your church, just to talk to about things that are going on inside your current church. So that's been my roles, my mentors.
How important do you think, Eric, that a mentor is to your kids or to yourself as a youth pastor? You've been there a long time.
Yeah.
How important is a mentor to you?
Well, I think it's huge. I think essentially to me, and probably throughout the rest of this time, we're going to keep using the word mentor, but I really just think of it as discipleship. Exactly. And so when we think of mentoring someone else, it just grounds it into the mission of who we are as God's people, what we're to be doing as a church. I ground the definition of mentorship into the Great Commission, that my role as a mentor is to help someone to observe all that Jesus has commanded us. And I look for that in someone that's going to kind of build into my life, someone that can teach me to follow Jesus more closely. So I think it's huge.
Luke, when you have you have problems you're trying to deal with, or you're running into roadblocks, you have this huge church. Who do you go to? Who does a youth pastor go to when they're struggling? I mean, sometimes you go to the people in the church or the leadership in the church. I had a situation. I had a friend of mine that was had some real struggles with his family, and the family, his wife went to the leadership of the church, and it backfired on him. I mean, they practically got rid of him because of his problems he was running into.
Right.
What do you do? Who do you go to?
Yeah, I have one of the guys that used to work here at the Bible Chapel. He is now planning a church in Buchanan, West Virginia, and he has always been intentional in his relationship with me. And so I really go to him, because I think you have to be really careful and know that, when there's just all that borderline between personal issues and things that you're going through, and also too, like, if I've got family issues, you always have kind of like what do you call them, like boxes of privacy that I like to call them, and you open up certain boxes with certain people, and as much as it is working in a church, like, there's a professional relationship you do have with people that oversee you and your senior pastor. And so I go to my buddy who no longer works here at the church, just because there are things where I need him to be my springboard, but I also don't want to be divulging every deep, dark secret, or go into that privacy box that I don't necessarily need to let my supervisor know, just because you get into a lot of issues with that. And so I've always found that when you're going through issues in ministry and you hit roadblocks and obstacles, it's kind of easy just to talk to people about that, but not everybody understands your story, and you can't assume. I've learned that in many different ways. But I go to my my mentor, who is in West Virginia, and we talk on the phone, and he's close enough to where we can meet up in Morgantown or in Wheeling or something like that to connect if I need some FaceTime. But I definitely go to him just to kind of help me sort through before I go to my supervisor and someone who oversees me.
David, what do you expect out of a mentor? What do you expect out of a person who is discipling or helping you? What do you expect from them?
I think a couple of things that I expect. I expect them to have a better knowledge of the Bible than I do. That's a big one. I'm always growing, but obviously, I want somebody that I can bounce ideas off of and make sure that they're scripturally sound, and that they make 100% sense, if that makes any sense to you. But I think somebody, a couple of you guys have touched on the point that I think to have a mentor, they need to be out of the picture. I think that I have a really good working relationship with my pastor. We can talk, about just about anything. We've gone through some rough stuff together, but there are certain things that you're not going to take to the pastor, or that you need something. You need somebody that you can again, bounce things off of, be the springboard that you can go to. So I think being offside is a really good thing, and I think somebody that's going to also call you on the carpet when you're wrong. Mm-hmm. There have been a lot of times when I've got several guys that I surround myself. I have about 5 different mentors around the states, and they're not in Ohio, but I have these guys that I contact, and I've had issues before with a senior pastor or with a family in the church, and had to go to them. And there have been a couple of times where they said, "You know what, Dave, I'm sorry, but you're wrong, and you need to go apologize, or you need to go about it in a different direction." And I think those are a couple of the key things with being a mentor.
Dan, do you think that, is this a formal thing? I mean, do we go down the list and say, okay, I'm going to pick out these great men to be my mentor, or maybe these men look at you and say, I'm going to pick out Dan to work with and to help? I mean, how does the process work?
I think it can be both. Sometimes it is a formal thing where you actually approach someone and say, yes, I would like you to be a mentor. I think sometimes God just brings natural people to our life. Right now, I mean, Tom and I are both part of a network of guys, and some of those guys are similar age to me, but they walk beside me, and we walk beside each other in different difficulties, different times. Even just in our area, we know each other. Through the area, we know our area we're in. So sometimes it's informal. God just brings people into life with us through networking.
Awesome. I'm going to take a quick break right now, and when we come back, I'm going to talk more about some ideas that help youth pastors and leaders to identify mentors. But I'm going to, first of all, this summer, youth leaders are bringing their kids to Elevate weekends in July that's changing lives here at the Teen Quest Ranch. We have great speakers, awesome worship, and fun stuff like paintball, airsoft, go-karts, horseback riding, swimming, and all the things you can do in the great outdoors. The Teen Quest Ranch is located in Somerset, Pennsylvania, just off the Pennsylvania Turnpike in western Pennsylvania. To get your youth group signed up, please call us right now at 1-800-288-8336 or go online at teenquest.org. That's teenquest.org. Today I'm speaking to several great men who are in the trenches working with students, Tom and David and Luke and Eric and Dan, and we're talking about this idea of mentorship, or I guess even, as you said, Eric, discipleship. And I think discipleship is very important. How many of you guys had someone, when you grew up, when you were young, you were a teenager, how many of you had somebody that mentored you or really discipled you? What do I do? Have you raise your hand? I don't know what you. Okay, all of you did. David, you did not.
Yeah, I did.
You all did. Okay. Tell me, David, how did that process work for you? I mean, how old were you, and who was that? Was it a youth pastor? Was it an uncle? Was it a grandfather? What happened?
I had several people in my life. My dad was a minister first off, and so there were several areas of my life that he mentored me through. For a long time I fought actually the call to ministry because I didn't want to do it just because my parents wanted me to do it, but even through that, there were several times when my dad would walk me through different things, and when certain things were going on at the church, he would walk me through what to do. There were also several youth pastors that stood side by side with me during certain situations, whether we lost a senior pastor or whether we're having issues with families in the youth group, and then also just opening up the Bible and teaching me, taking me deeper into the Scripture, creating a want to learn, a desire to be a better follower of Christ.
Mm-hmm. How can we do a better job? And maybe this is not a great question, but how can we do a better job discipling our young people in our youth groups? I mean, obviously, if Luke, you have a 1,500 member church, you must have a lot of kids in your church. No way you can personally mentor or disciple or whatever you want to call it, all those kids yourself.
Right.
So you've got to have some kind of a training program to prepare adults to mentor, to disciple these kids.
Yeah, I'm really big into running and ministering to these kids by using what I call like just team ministry. I have people that I pour into my core leadership that in turn they have teams, and they really are the ones that are down deep with the kids. And I do mentor kids and disciple kids like during the week, and guys that I meet with once a week. And we actually are using a curriculum called Living Grounded, which is something that we implemented from the Bible Chapel. It's actually just our version of Operation Timothy. I'm sure you guys have probably heard of that. But it's really just a Paul-Timothy relationship. It's a weekly thing. It's just taking people from life foundations or life questions and taking them into kind of building a foundation, and really just helping them change their outlook on life. Keeping God's word central to their life and understanding what it means to follow hard after Christ. And so that's kind of the groundwork that we use to really build into the kids on a weekly basis. But what I do is I meet with core leaders that are then taking guys, are taking young 6th, 7th, and 8th graders once a week through this discipleship curriculum that is bent towards middle school kids, and then obviously with the adult females are taking it. So really, I don't like to do one, or I like to do maybe 2 is the max, maybe 3, but really I feel like proper discipleship for especially kids one-on-one is super important to me, and I think that I've just seen it work. Kids are getting it. They're able to ask the hard questions, go through the material, but I feel like the real life change and the discipleship happens on a one-on-one basis.
Tom, what about you? You've been in ministry a while, and how do you effectively make sure that every one of your students in your youth group have some kind of a discipleship or mentor program?
Well, I think what Luke talks about is really the core. I mean, I have to get out of the way, and really I see student ministry as much about developing adult leaders as it is about developing students. And Andy Stanley has recently been talking about the idea that you need to do for the one what you want to do for the many. Mm-hmm. And I think part of it is, as youth pastors, I see so many young guys who they want to be the rock star leader, and right. the reality is they're not that good. I mean, and the model that Jesus had, it really is. I mean, I know that we could be that good, but the problem is that, most guys, the average tenure of a youth pastor, I think right now is 21 months. I actually am in a circumstance where I was a small group leader when they let go a young man who just made it, just made a bad decision, and I think it took me 7 years to sort of work through that reality, because it is about relationships. And so I think we have to really create opportunities for pouring into our adult leaders to create that moment. I actually, on a monthly basis, meet, we call it First Sunday. We meet the first Sunday of each month during first service, our first gathering, for about an hour to 2 hours. And over fellowship, and we do the accountability, we do the belonging, we do the caring, we pray for each other, we work through, and just really see that that's in, so that my leaders know that I value what they do, and then I try to get out of the way. We're in a sort of unique circumstance where many of the students who come, like we just are wrapping up our program for this year. Last night we had 60 students here. The majority of those students are not here on Sunday morning, which is a great opportunity, but their families aren't connected, and so it creates a whole very interesting dynamic in terms of helping them grow. So this summer we're really going to be intentional about pushing out the one-on-one opportunities and really trying to create that.
Yeah. I know a number of years ago when I've been a youth pastor of 3 different churches over the years, and now, of course, doing Teen Quest full-time. But I remember over the years we would try to find a grandparent who would actually adopt a teenager in the youth group. And that seemed to really be a great dynamic because older people just love kids. They just love kids, and I remember that connection really made a big difference. Dan, what could you say to maybe there's a youth pastor listening right now that may be scratching his head and say, you know, what can I do to really get my kids connected spiritually? And I'm doing the best I can. Maybe he has a big church or whatever, or maybe even a small church, but he just can't get to all these kids. What can you say to help him?
Well, I think that in our church we're at a point where I can't do it all. Years ago, my wife and I started. We discipled everybody, but we really lean into our connection group leaders, our small group leaders. Some churches call them small group leaders, and we give away a lot to them. We become leaders to them, let them do the job. What I found is also finding slightly older and more mature leaders to be those small group leaders. If you can, we try to use couples as much as possible. We also use parents, but we put those parents in with other kids, not their own kids, in these groups. We find that's a huge, huge help in mentoring, in discipling, in connecting with kids, because it's somebody who's been down the road quite a ways. There's nothing against a college student helping or young adult helping, but I found parents are excellent leaders, excellent mentors, especially when it comes to someone else's kids. That's what we do at our church.
I'm going to turn the table here a little bit, turn the page a little bit. I want to talk about you guys as youth pastors, youth leaders. You mentioned Tom earlier that I think it was Tom that mentioned that the average youth pastor is 2 years or 21
like
months.
Yeah.
21 months. Do you think maybe that's because there's a lack of mentorship on the part of a youth pastor, or maybe the lack of? We're attending a church here in Somerset. I don't get to go as often as I like because we're doing a lot of weekend stuff at our Teen Quest Ranch. But they've had 3 youth pastors in about 4 or 5 years. And they say they can't seem to keep a youth pastor, and they kind of scratch their head and say, sometimes they say, well, I think it's better off us not having a youth pastor because we'd have a more stable environment. They're coming and going. Do you think maybe because of the lack of mentorship or the lack of someone helping them stay with it that's causing the problem?
I think part of the issue. I think part of the issue today is we're working through this. I think every large church is trying to figure out that the larger question is why are supposedly by statistics that we're losing students after they graduate from high school. We could argue whether or not that's true, but I think in the context, I've got 3 children. The youngest is 21, and the oldest is 28, and there's a 23-year-old in between. But all 3 of them are in their own dream. Even though they were raised in the church, they're just part of that today's contemporary culture. And I think as a church we have to rethink some things. Even Saddleback recently has now done away with one of their youth services on the weekend, and are inviting the students to go up to what they say the big church. Because even though they've just opened it was about 5 years ago, they had just opened a $25 million, 55,000 square foot student center that's just off the wall, incredible. They're realizing that relationship, and I think we want to silo these guys or gals, and we hire the rock star to come in, but they're really doing life on life can't happen, and we actually set most guys and gals are up for failure because of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But if I could jump in there, I see a lot of that where it just seems like, people view a youth minister as kind of a hired gun that's going to come in and sort of fix all the problems of what we're not doing at home, or what's not getting done somewhere else in the church. And then the youth pastor's role turns into that of a giant Band-Aid, and no one can live under that for very long. And so that's why you see such a great turnover, I think, instead of the mentality that says every member is a minister. Everyone should be involved in ministry, and the role of pastors and teachers and elders is one of equipping and administrating and and equipping leaders. I mean, it's all 2 Timothy 2:2, right? It's so that you can find someone that's faithful, who's willing to pour into someone else that's faithful, and really that's a great. I tell you, that was a light on moment for me. As someone that dealt with youth, because you have a heart for the real fringe people in your group, and those that are kind of the least connected, and those that are kind of the least mature. I think we have a tendency to pour all of our effort into them, and I don't say ignore those now, but I do notice that Jesus preached to the crowd, but he used his life and his energy and his time strategically to pour into a few. Only 12, and really out of the 12, 3. So that was kind of a light bulb moment for me when I realized that Paul told Timothy to find those that are faithful. And so now I look for, we tease each other, we look for fat people. Faithful, available, teachable.
I like that. That's good.
Faithful, available, teachable. And I let them know up front, man, you're going to get the best of my time, you're going to get the best of my energy. But when this is all done, I'm going to ask you to do this with somebody else, and you know that going in. And then we just kind of let the thing reproduce itself.
I think there's a couple of things. Sorry, Dan.
Okay.
I think there's a couple of things there. I think one of the reasons why you have so many youth ministers that leave the youth ministry, after that statistic, and that's not the first time I've heard that statistic. I lived that statistic as a young teenager for many years, and over many churches. That was pretty typical. And one of the things that I see with a lot of younger youth ministers now, and I'm not younger myself. I may look it, but I use oil of Olay, and I have to grow the beard to make myself look a little older. But I think one of the things that I had to realize, and several other youth ministers, and probably even you guys realized, was that if you try and do it yourself, trying to go in there as the rock star, like when you take a church and you walk in there, you're like, I'm going to be the absolute best that there's ever been, and nobody is ever going to be any better than I am, and I'm just going to blow their, I'm going to blow their minds with all this stuff, and the reality is, we're not. We're who we are, and we can't do it. We can't do it alone, and what ends up happening is when you do it alone, you end up getting burnt out. And you have a lot of youth pastors, several that I know, that don't take vacation, that don't take time off, because they say, well, no, they can't do it without me. Well, if that's what you're doing, then you're not following the discipleship pattern that Jesus set in place. Jesus could do it all, yes, but he poured into the 12, knowing that they were the ones that were going to carry carry his message on when he was gone. I mean, he was only there for a very short time. Not saying that youth pastors should be there for a very short time. I mean, I think we've proven this fact, to be in place. That who was here 18? Who's been there 18 years? Was it you, Eric?
That's me. Yeah.
Yeah, 18 years. That's huge. That's commendable. And I think what happens is you realize that you are who you are, and you are using the talents that God's given you, and you've moved on. I think the other thing too is that when we add group leaders in there, and we allow them to help us in what we're doing, that's a huge thing. One of the things that we're going to start in our service coming up this summer is we do have youth. We have our small groups. But we have them broken down into 2-year age brackets. So, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th. And one of the things that I want to put in place is I want to have one couple or group leader for each age grade. Okay, and so for instance, I have John Doe for my 9th grade. When that 9th grade moves up to 10th grade, I want John Doe to move up to 10th grade with him. And so that what ends up happening, because like some of you have said, I can't be there for everybody. We run anywhere from 45 to 50 a week, and we have about 120 that come through the doors in a month. So it's literally a turnover every time. So I can't minister to every single one of those, like the group leaders can. So if they're moving up with them as they transition out of youth, once they turn 18, graduate high school, then they've got somebody that technically could have been with them for 5-6 years, and if I move on to lead pastorate or something like that, then it doesn't leave that huge gaping hole, because they've got somebody that is strong there in the church, that's been there, that's going to be there for them when they have problems going forward.
Guys, I want to close with a question for all of you. We've been talking about mentorship. We've been talking about getting our young people, make sure they're discipled or mentored. We talked about your mentorship and someone that you can talk to. I imagine, many pastors, they're ministering all the time. Where do they go and hear and be helped? But anyway, let's suppose there's a youth pastor right now that's listening to this program, and he is on the verge of quitting his church. He's had trouble. He's had struggles. Things are falling apart. The senior pastor's not really giving him any help, and the parents are terrible to work with. The teenagers aren't coming like they used to come, and boy, he just wants to give it up and quit. He wants to even get out of the ministry because it's just been too hard. He's been in the ministry now and youth pastor for 21 months, and he's ready to give it up. Let's start with Dan. Give him some advice. What can you tell him?
I would say stick it out. It's like marriage. We tell you that there's a 2-year hump in marriage, and you gotta get through the first two years, and get through that first initial hump. Longevity is the key to success overall. I mean, you don't really get to see the stories, hear the stories until after the first 2 years, honestly. So get through that hump.
Awesome, Luke. Give us some advice.
I agree with Dan. You just got to stick it out. I think you also have to redefine vision. I think when you see something that's not working, you just got to move on. It's a hands and knees thing. You got to be on your feet, and get to your knees and just ask the Lord to redefine the vision. Vision's constantly leaking, and sometimes people forget, and sometimes it's okay to blow things up and start over.
Great. Tom, what advice can you give that youth pastor who's just saying, I'm about ready to get out of ministry. I am sick of this, and this is not working, and nobody seems to care. What can you tell me?
Well, first, suck it up. I agree with Dan and Luke. It's like push into the difficult, because that's where God's going to show up. But then I would say reach out. All of our names are available through this podcast, right. And reach out to you, Mark, at TeenQuest, and don't do this by yourself. God knows where you're at. He's put you in that circumstance, and yes, He can use someone else in that circumstance, and He may or He may not. But lean into the difficult, and I think that's where you'll see coming to grips with, first of all, it's not about you, but that it is about you, and your willingness to be transparent and to realize that you can't answer it all, and that you need to do it not by yourself, but with others.
David, what do you have to say to that young youth pastor who's just struggling? And man, what do I do? Give me some advice, David.
I think you do stick it out. I think one of the things that you do have to do is you have to realize that prayer and fasting and listening to the Holy Spirit, I think that's a big one. I think when you look at when you look at the stories in the Bible, and you've got this great prophet that's running for his life, and he runs into this cave, and then you read where it says that that God was not in the fire and the wind and the earthquake, but He was in the still small voice. And
right.
Some people actually say that still small voice was actually just complete quiet. And sometimes you get really frustrated. I've been there. You get frustrated in youth ministry, and you feel like, man, I feel like when I'm praying to a brick wall. And sometimes it's God just saying, hey, quit talking. Let me do the talking, and let me speak into your life. The other thing that I've got to say, again, push through it and reach out. I found that there are so many youth pastors out there, whether it's a big church, whether it's a small church. Everybody knows the big names, Elevation, Lakewood, Fellowship Bible, all these big ones. And you know what? A lot of those people, if you'll just email them, they will contact you back. Don't try and call them because then they consider you a stalker, and they're probably not going to answer your phone calls. But those guys are there to help you. And I think finally you have to, if all else fails, you almost have to reevaluate what's going on. Look at, am I still supposed to be here? Am I here just because of safety, financial security, or am I here because I'm called to be here? And those are the things. But don't give up just when the going gets tough.
Eric, you're the older guy in the crowd here, and I years ago I had someone tell me that you really can't have a real effective ministry unless you're there at least 6 years. What do you tell a youth leader who's just about ready to give it up? What do you tell them? I mean, stick it out. But
Well, somebody told me once, don't pray for a lighter load, pray for broader shoulders. And I applies anywhere that applies in youth ministry. Don't pray for the Lord to make your life easy. Pray for the Lord to build into you a love for Christ and a love for His Word that wants to push through difficulty. I think some of it too is I think it was Luke maybe that talked about kind of redefining what success is. And I think we're so results driven. We're about budgets and buildings and numbers, and I think success is faithfulness.
Well, I like that.
That's very good.
We look to years of steady faithfulness, and God's the one that brings results, right? Apollos watered and Paul planted. He says God gives the increase, so it's God that produces results. It's God that does great things, and our responsibility is just to be faithful. So I focus on that, being faithful, and I think too. I just want to mention real quick. We've kind of in the course of this, I think maybe we've sold senior pastors a little short. Like, oh well, your senior pastor wouldn't help you. I think sometimes we have the impression that pastor's got his own thing going on. He's kind of got his own agenda, and he's busy with other things, and he doesn't care about my little department. But it's been my experience, if you go to your senior pastor, not with your guard up, not with, but just with a sense of, hey pastor, I'm struggling, or I need some help. Is there? Can you give me some advice? And I think a lot of times you find your senior pastor is a lot more willing to help and to build into you and support you, and keep things confidential maybe than we give him credit for.
Right. Guys, great advice, and I sure appreciate you coming in today, Dan and Luke and Tom and David and Eric, for your time today to share your thoughts on this mentorship, discipling young people, and your own discipleship, your own mentoring as well. And we appreciate you guys. You guys are in the trenches, and you realize the impact that just 5 of you guys have in the lives of so many students. And I commend you and thank you for your faithfulness to young people, because we need men desperately. We need men like you to keep doing what you're doing. And someday when you have gray hair like me, you can say, I've been doing it all these years. I've been doing it 30. Yeah. I've been doing it 38 years. I can't believe it's going that fast. But one thing I've learned over the years is stay with it. Be faithful. Don't ever quit. I wanted to quit so many times. I wanted to quit hundreds of times, and I didn't do it. But I thought of it, and I just didn't do it. And every time I would climb that ladder and then not quit, God would just show me another opportunity, and just kept going and going and going.
Anyway. Maybe add one little thing. The Bible tells us that he who finds a wife finds a good thing, and I found my good thing when I was 18, and probably my greatest support in ministry. Anytime I talk about quitting, my wife's like, "What are you talking about?"
Yeah.
So lean on your wives.
Great. Again, guys, thank you for coming on our show. This is Mark Witt
Thank you, Mark.
as well,
Yeah,
and everyone listening, have a great day.
Blessings.
Hey, thanks for joining us today on Teen Quest Live with Mark Witt. You know, the discussion is just starting. You can visit our website and leave your comments and thoughts about this topic. Find us online at teenquest.org. That's teenquest.org. And we'll see you next time on Teen Quest Live.